in North America as US President Donald Trump has filed a $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, its parent companies, and several of its executives and journalists. The suit filed in Miami federal court stems from a recent article linking Trump to a 2003 birthday greeting for the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. According to the Journal, the greeting was part of a collection of letters given to Epstein for his 50th birthday. It allegedly included a typewritten note featuring Trump's name, a crude drawing of a naked woman, and the phrase, "May every day be another wonderful secret." The article also suggested that the drawing bore a Donald Trump signature in a compromising location. Trump, however, has strongly denied writing the note or drawing the image. In another interview, he threatened to sue the newspaper if it published the story. Trump's lawsuit names Rupert Murdoch, Dow Jones, News Corp, Chief Executive Robert Thompson, and 2 Wall Street Journal reporters. It accuses them of publishing a false and defamatory story with intent to harm Trump's reputation, both financially and politically. In response, a spokesperson for Dow Jones said the publication stands by its reporting and plans to vigorously defend the article in court. Well, of course, this story has many ramifications, and the Jeffrey Epstein conversation has sent ripples through the US. Joining us to discuss this latest development, Ross Feingold, a political analyst who is joining us from Taipei, Taiwan. Ross, as always, thank you ever so much for joining us. Can I please get your first initial thoughts off the back of this huge defamatory and defamation lawsuit that has been issued by Donald Trump?
It's no surprise President Trump threatened to do this if the story was published, and he's proceeded. He's also somebody who has a history, including recently, of suing media organizations. So his reaction, his response comes as no surprise. And also keep in mind that he has deep pockets. He could afford to pay very expensive lawyers a lot of money to pursue this case. And things like pre-trial maneuvering and discussions between the two sides in the United States legal system could go on for quite a long time, could really run up the legal bill, but President Trump doesn't care. Now, winning this type of lawsuit is very difficult, and we should also keep in mind that the defendant here is a very sophisticated organization. They have their own excellent lawyers. They have their own reporting and ethical standards as well. One would have to assume that they wouldn't have gone with the story, they wouldn't have published it unless they actually had proof, because to publish it without proof would be extremely foolish and would open them up to a legal judgment. So this will play out in the coming weeks and months, and it's really going to be interesting to see whether or not the Wall Street Journal actually has the proof.
Yes, and Ross, of course, you mentioned there one defence in the face of a defamation lawsuit is, of course, the truth factor, and it will be interesting to assess the Wall Street Journal's moves next. But let's now look at the wider conversation around Jeffrey Epstein, of course, causing a political headache for Donald Trump. Do you think this move by the Wall Street Journal and this report that they have published will cause him any more issues politically, not just personally to his character?
That's a really interesting question. The political issue at the moment still seems to be the federal government, the Trump administration's Justice Department decision not to release additional information after hinting for months, ever since it took office on January 20th, that more information releases would be forthcoming. Is President Trump going to pay a political price with his supporters because of the Wall Street Journal article? Probably not. He's been known to make crude remarks about women, most famously what was released before the 2016 election. He's survived that. In fact, he got reelected in 2024. Politically, President Trump himself probably won't pay much of a price for the Wall Street Journal article's allegations, that the fact that he may have written a somewhat off-color doodle to Jeffrey Epstein, and it is a reminder that he had a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, but President Trump hasn't denied that. He did say we eventually had a falling out, which does appear to be true. So again, I don't think politically the Wall Street Journal article by itself does much damage to President Trump. But the issue still remains the federal government's announcement that they were not going to release more information about Jeffrey Epstein. That seems to be where President Trump is paying a bit of a political price at the moment with his supporters. Of course, not with his opponents. His opponents don't like President Trump. So whatever President Trump says or does or is accused of doing, that's not going to affect people who don't like him because they already dislike him.
Yes, and Ross, where does this go next? Of course, now there has been a lawsuit. What will be the next steps, and where could this go legally?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that on Friday, the Justice Department did go to the court. They went to the judge that was overseeing the Epstein case, and they have asked for permission to release grand jury transcripts. Now, this is very rare in the United States judicial system. It is possible, and one of the arguments would be, one of the arguments that the federal government will make to the judge is that this is a matter of great or extraordinary public interest, which justifies releasing the grand jury transcript. Now, the release of the grand jury transcripts, and keeping in mind those grand jury discussions way back in 2019, that is what led to Jeffrey Epstein being indicted. So the prosecutors would have presented to the grand jury details about the alleged criminal activity of Jeffrey Epstein, and it was enough information to get an indictment, although getting an indictment from a grand jury in the United States is typically not very difficult. The prosecutors just need to show enough evidence to convince the grand jurors to issue an indictment. It's not the same standard as getting a guilty verdict in an actual trial. But anyway, one important step here is this request for grand jury details to be released. And of course, they'll have to redact the names of victims and some other personal details. But I do think if this is released, it will provide more information for the critics, for those people who are worried or concerned or accusing the government of a cover-up. So that's something to watch, is whether or not the judge in the criminal case of Jeffrey Epstein will agree to release those grand jury transcripts. Now, as far as the Wall Street Journal case, as I said, the pretrial maneuvering is going to take a very, very long time. Some of that will play out in, as we say in America, the court of public opinion. We'll definitely hear the lawyers making accusations about the other side on TV shows, for example. But that process is going to move very, very slowly.
Yes, absolutely. And we, of course, here on NewsX World will keep an eye on all of those developments as they happen. Ross will be staying with us for later in the programme. However, first we head to Africa, and the Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23 rebel group have signed a declaration of principles to end fighting in eastern Congo. As per the text declaration signed in Qatar, Congo and M23 will commit to sign the peace agreement by August the 18th. The signing took place in Doha in Qatar and followed months of Qatari mediation after talks began in April. The US has exerted pressure to finalise a durable peace deal in the volatile country, hoping that it would attract billion SOF dollars in Western investment to a region rich in minerals like gold, cobalt, copper, tantalum and lithium, among others. The African Union said a ceasefire signed between the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Rwanda-backed M23 armed group was a significant development. The African Union chairperson, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, said that it's a major milestone towards efforts to achieve lasting peace, security and stability in eastern DRC and the wider Great Lakes region.